Hull KR have had a very bad week, so the table has had a tiny little tweak. Bulls and Giants fighting to avoid the spoon. Players getting injured in the World Cup soon. Leigh certainly seem to have timed their run. Wakefield starting to look like they're done. Welcome to the 34th episode of Super League 360, a podcast primarily about the top tier of British Rugby League, but plenty of other things as well. My name is Lee Addison.
And my name is John Davidson.
Sorry it's late, first of all. John's been away with family, and therefore you're probably going to hear this a little bit later than you're probably used to. That's all good, I hope. And for those who don't know, I'm a coach in Australia, John a journalist in the UK. You'll notice our accents have switched. He's got one that's should really be mine now. I've lived in Australia that long, and I've got one that maybe John should have because he's living not too far away from where I grew up. If you are a listener on the Ashes Rugby League, I think many of you are getting that message now. If you're listening on the Ashes Rugby League podcast platform, please switch over. Please switch over to Rugby League Coach and Super League 360 if you can. I'd love you to listen to both the Rugby League Coach podcast and the Super League 360 podcast on there. Please switch. You've not got long now if you don't. And we're also on the Rugby League Coach YouTube channel too. And we are also played weekly by rugbyleague.com, thanks to Steve and the guys there. So this week, John, we won't do a Rugby League tweet of the week or anything like that, or Johnny's Jab or anything like that. We've decided, haven't we, that we're going to give a bit more to our listeners who've sent many questions this week. We acknowledge that sometimes we cover some of the topics before we get to the questions and we rush through them a little bit. So we're actually going to flip the podcast around today. Questions first, but you've got to promise, guys, not to switch it off after you've heard an answer to your question. Are you ready to go, John? Mouthful of tea?
I am. We'll start with X or Twitter. Question from Andy Preston. A speculation that V'landys may entertain 22 NRL teams and move to a conference structure. Where might a Northern Hemisphere rebel breakaway fit into such a plan? And then he's put New South Wales - Queensland - rest of Oz - Islands plus Northern Hemisphere? Question mark.
I'm ready. I'm ready for this because I listened to Peter V'landys say that last week on a podcast.
Oh, I listened to that pod as well. I think it was the Mark Burris pod, wasn't it? But I'll let you go first,
all right,
Lee, because you're raring to go. You're ripping in.
I detect some hubris in Mr. V'landys right now. I detect some arrogance is too big a word because he's done fantastically for the game of rugby league. The work his administration has done has been fantastic. Do I like the NRL right now? No, we spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. It's not for me. I still consume it sometimes, but it's too fast for me and too much like ping pong. But I know why they're doing it, and he explained this on the Mark Boris podcast. What he also said was the NRL's better than it's ever been. I mean, I found that a little bit disrespectful to some of the great administrators we had in the early 90s. He also started to talk about this global thing as well. Before I talk about the global thing, he also started advising people on health at the end. I mean, I didn't know he was a health guru, but he was telling us exactly what we should do, and he was being very firm about it. So I do detect a little bit of hubris in Mr. V'landys, and I'm certainly not criticising him too much. I just detect that. He's got to be really careful. He's got to be, in my opinion, he's got to be really careful not to fight on too many fronts. And you and I have already hinted, John, that with Perth and PNG coming in, the Super League broadcast talks and the partnership talks have been delayed and delayed and delayed. I mean, why would you throw in too many more projects, particularly when 50% of the dynamic duo, PVL and Andrew Abdo, has left the building in terms of Abdo going to Tennis Australia. So in terms of that question, what Volandis does sometimes is throws things out to the media to see what it feels like. There will definitely be conferences in the NRL in the coming years. I have no doubt about that. Whether those conferences include the Northern Hemisphere, I think a lot of that goes, John, on what happens with these current negotiations.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, he definitely wants a conference system, ideally, like the NFL has and the NBA has. But I just think, I know we had it with I think it was the World Club Challenge in 97, around that time, which was obviously Super League War. I think that kind of showed that doesn't really work. Like, people aren't going to fly, 24 hours and then all the all the travel, the costs. I don't think, Wigan playing the Roosters one week, flying back playing St Helens, and then say flying back and playing Manly the week after. While the idea of it sounds great and lofty, I don't think there's enough money in the game, and the game's not big enough globally to do that, at least now. I mean, no other sport, Liverpool aren't playing, Everton and then travelling to New York and then, going down under to play Sydney FC, are they? Like,
if you think back to the World Club Challenge, what happened was every team from England went over to Australia for about a month and played those fixtures, and vice versa. The Australian teams went over for a month. So logistically, it's a nightmare. I mean, we're one of the rare sports where our two biggest competitions are on opposite sides of the rock that we inhabit. So that's not logistically very easy.
No.
Jason from Club Funding International. We've covered whether the NRL can actually fix Super League, but let's flip it around. How much responsibility are the clubs taking for their own success? And I don't just mean on the field. Every club is better off with more bums on seats, and you get bums on seats by being genuinely part of your community, by meaning something to people and showing up for them. That takes time and effort more than it takes money. Are enough clubs doing that work? Given clubs are clearly operating at different levels of ambition and capability, are they better off going back to at least a 3-tier system? Clubs with no interest in Super League can sit in the 3rd tier and be perfectly happy, and the clubs that want it can work towards the standards on and off the field that earn them a place. The catch is that only works with a rock-solid progression path. Are there lessons to take for the Premier League on how to build one?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think that community connection is vital, and the likes of Wigan and Leeds do that really well, particularly through their foundations, but just through, lots of initiatives. I think some clubs don't do that particularly well. I think there's probably clubs in the Championship in particular aren't strong enough in that area, and I think that's how you build a bottom to top up organisation, or you build a connection. And I think there should be clubs in the lower down who, realistically aren't ever going to be right for Super League or have a big enough fan base. But I think that the other problem is there's owners or there's people who think, why couldn't we be, why not? Because there is that promotion relegation kind of cultural identity in England. So it kind of works against each other. You've got this professional sporting franchise on the one side, and then you've got this, community-based organisation on the other, and we're trying to be all things to all people. Like, I think you can cradle both of those things, but there'll be a time where people will be like, well, some clubs will be like, well, we'll put money into, we'll put that $100,000 into a halfback, not into our foundation, sending people out into schools or, creating a women's team. So there's always a trade-off. I think it's a difficult thing to grasp both sides.
And that's why promotion and relegation has been removed a few times, because they wanted the lower Super League clubs to think a bit more long-term. And the problem is they keep changing the goalposts. The promotion and relegation will be removed for 3 years, and it will come back. And in my 21 years on this earth, because I'm so young, no, seriously, double that at least, I have lost count the amount of times the format has changed in the UK.
Yeah.
And I think it would take both of us a good hour to research that. and get it right.
Yeah. We were always looking for the golden structure answer, but there isn't ever a golden structure. There's problems that we never solve just by changing the structure. I mean, whether it's middle eights, whether it's relegation, whether it's 10 teams, 12 teams, 14 teams, 15 teams, IMG, franchise licensing, whatever it is, we're not solving those problems that are underlying. And again, the power structure, if you've got clubs on voting it, then it's never really going to go one way. That's the whole point of having an independent commission, or you're having people who aren't making decisions based on what Wigan want or what Hull FC want or what Oldham want. As an example. Another question, one from Brian Davies. Heard some Hull KR fans blaming Willie Peters for not rotating his squad enough this season. Is that fair, or is it just winning trophies is tough, retaining them even harder? I'll let you go for that one, Lee, first.
Retaining trophies is harder. Rotating squads in the current format of the game, in both Super League and the National Ping Pong Rugby League in Australia, is harder than ever because players are breaking down more than ever. The injury rates have gone through the roof in Super League this year, surely, because none of the players were prepared for the speed of the game. It changed fundamentally at the drop of a hat, basically, before the comp. Again, listening to Volandis last week, people keep blaming the 6 again rule. It's actually the emphasis on the ruck speeds, which is just as important, if not even more important. I think those two combined make for a lethal combination. Early Bird, while we're on Hull KR, who regularly tweets us and chats with us, and he asked a question well over a week ago now about Mikey Lewis and his behaviour and his potential England chances being affected. I went on the record on this podcast maybe 3 or 4 months ago that Willie Peters needed to wind Mikey Lewis's head in, and I think that's another example of just, you know, if coaching was so easy, everybody would do everything right all the time, and it isn't. And I think sometimes winning trophies or sometimes winning games, sometimes it can be because the others aren't quite up to the same mark. And, you know, Wigan won a premiership the year before, and then they just lost a bit of their edge for a year, didn't they, if you remember? And now they seem to have got it back twofold. So I've said this before, nothing fails like success. And I'm sure Willie is learning all the lessons, and I'm sure Hull KR are learning all the lessons. It tends to be a journey, not just a destination all the time.
Yeah, there was a follow-up question from Kevin Collett from Brian's one about Hull KR and Willie Peters. Was the announcement that Peters was leaving instrumental in the KR performance drop-off? I would say there's been a few people putting this, and I know obviously he's talking to Michael Chammas in the evenings and they're building a squad and all that sort of thing, but I don't think it's a case of he's taken his eye off Hull KR. I think it's exactly what you've said there, Lee. It's much harder to retain trophies, particularly a treble, which Hull KR had never won in their 100-whatever-year history. And I think, they lost Waria Hargraves and McAlorum. I think they've not been able to, maybe the depth isn't there, but they've not been able to build squad depth. They've not been able to bring young players through. And I think the Hull KR rise has been quite unique in that they've kind of this sort of Moneyball approach of picking up players from other teams and improving them. And they've not relied on their own juniors, which, literally every other team in Super League that's won Super League has done. So I think that has a short shelf life of how long you can maintain yourself at the top. And I think also that overall that squad is much older. There's not really a lot of young players coming through. So I think there is some regeneration needed. And I think there's been a bit of a fallback to the mean. When you throw in Vegas as well, they just look very tired.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't think Willie Peters going to PNG has made a huge impact, and that's
and I
why.
think if that questionnaire listened to a lot of our old podcasts, I think you'll find we've charted that all year. Really, it's not a shock to us too, is it?
No. I mean, I think we talked a lot about Hull KR What they did is unbelievable, but it is ridiculously hard to maintain that at the top, particularly when they've never been traditionally one of the big clubs, have they?
And they've not fallen down like the Broncos.
Yeah. No, well, they're in danger of falling out of six now with that shock loss to Toulouse and St Helens winning. But I still think, they've probably better chance than St Helens getting into the six at this point would be remarkable. But we'll talk about that in a bit. But there's another question from Stocklord. The delusion that Super League don't need the NRL needs to be discussed. I think we pretty much discussed that last week for about 30 to 40 minutes, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think, look, just to put on the record again, I don't think Super League isn't going to die without an NRL partnership. Like, crowds are up. The numbers are quite good, but the key number is the TV deal. And the indication is that TV deal will either be a slight increase, maybe with inflation, or, a better than a slight increase. But it's not, I think, a question of survival. It's more about where you want to go in the future and how you want to grow. And I think there's this argument, at least in sport and in business, isn't there, Lee, that if you're not growing, you are dying. And I don't think rugby league will ever die in the UK, but it's not going to go on an exponential growth curve like, darts or boxing has, unless things change. And I think the current structure, even if there's been slight improvements in certain areas, I don't think the current structure, when and talking administration leaders, is set up for the change that's needed.
I mean, I didn't mention this last week, but wouldn't we absolutely love both sides of the rugby league world to be working in perfect harmony? Wouldn't that be fantastic? That would be that would be amazing, whether it's NRL buying Super League or Super League buying the NRL or 50-50 partnership. It would just be fantastic for us all to be on the same page somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens much more and it's not perfect, but in football, in soccer, in rugby union, I think they're and there are always divisions and whatever, but I think their international element, the coordination is much stronger, and there's a stronger governing body.
Gianni Infantino will need a job soon, so we'll get him in. The FIFA dude. What's the next one, John?
Kevin Collett has been on fire with the questions this week, and this is a perfect one for you, Lee. What was the last tactical innovation in rugby league? Where is the next Pep Guardiola of rugby league who will make a noticeable difference to how the game is played? Is this likely given how the sport is coached at all levels?
The most remarkable, significant one, in my opinion, and there'll be people involved in the game who'll shoot me down. You don't know what you're talking about. This has changed. That's changed. Because there's been subtle ones. There's been subtle, the way wings put the ball down, for example.
That's I was going to think of that, of wingers being prop forwards in the modern game.
Yeah. But also the way they put the ball down. And half their bodies in the grandstand, but the ball's down, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in terms of actually the way the game's played, I think we have to go back as far as the emergence of wrestling maybe 20 years ago. And I really lament rugby league's failure to evolve. And there is a subculture in rugby league that all the bells and whistles in the world won't hide. People are resistant to change in rugby league in that regard, and if you're too far outside of the box, you get ostracised somewhat. And I think the next thing that looked like evolution was when Des Hasler's teams with the Bulldogs started, the prop started passing the ball.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah, there was the change, wasn't it, where locks or 13s were just another prop, and then we've moved back to 13s actually being.
And that's the key word. We've moved back. That's the point.
Yeah, we have.
I remember people in 2012 saying, "Oh, this is a new innovation, forwards passing the ball." Artie Beetson would be rolling in his grave if he heard that. Lee Crooks, You can go back
still
years
alive.
and years and years.
Yeah.
Lee Crooks is alive, yeah. But honestly, that was rubbish. So yeah, I would go back to wrestling. But what happens in rugby league, right, is everyone just copies things, and they don't ask why. That's why we've got an emergence now of props who have no clue how to decide when and where to pass a football, try and pass a football, and they get the mates killed. It happens every week in both competitions. It's rugby league's big failing, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. If you look at the last 20 years, you would say the wrestle, I can remember, and probably it was around that time where fullbacks became another halfback, didn't they? That was not, I would say 90s before that. Fullbacks
I would say that's Darren Lockyer moving from 6 to fullback.
Yeah, that was definitely
from fullback to 6, sorry.
Yeah, and Billy Slater, I think, probably started that movement now. And I'm trying to think, obviously, wingers essentially being there for meters and for, yardage. And as you said, the rule change in the corner, being able to put the ball down. But yeah, I can't think of a lot of other,
all the things we've talked about are relying on certain individuals doing certain things, a small cluster of individuals, as opposed to the whole way the game has changed. The way the game changes is because of the rules, because we react to what's happened. Instead of fixing the causes, we fix the symptoms, and that's why the game changed. That's why we've gone from WrestleMania in Super League in 2025 to ping pong in 2026, right? So I think
the other one
good question.
Yeah, I think the other one I'd throw in would be the short kickoff, which I think you, being Queensland-based, Lee, you might know more than me, but was that kind of brought in by the Walkers at Ipswich?
Yes, they did do that, but again, I mean, I'm pretty convinced there's been short kickoff since 1908, because if you think about how the two games evolve, well, how do rugby union teams kick off? And now game came from rugby union, so it's nothing new.
No. I think they brought it in the sense of, or started using it, and then other people have copied, and now, at least in Super League, nearly every team does it, nearly on every dropout. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily a brilliant tactical innovation, but I suppose you could term it as an innovation of sorts. The second question, or his third one.
No, wait.
What is being considered by the sport to reduce the amount of time the game is lasting for, time limits on captains, challenges, etc.? I honestly don't know what they're looking at to reduce the amount of time. I think a time limit on captains' challenge is a must. I think we've been saying that for many weeks. But yeah, faster video referee, a time on that, I think for Super League would also be a necessity. But that, I think, comes down to the fact that the NRL has a bunker and Super League doesn't, so it's operating on a much leaner budget.
I've had a message from a player I've coached, played with, and a few other things in the UK, Kieran Lacey. Hi, mate. I'm looking for a favour from your side of the world, pal. Widnes Vikings wheelchair team won the Northern Conference League at the weekend to go with the Challenge Trophy early this year. Hopefully we will make it the triple with the National Conference Grand Final in a few weeks' time. I have been asked to collect some well done, good luck messages from the world of rugby league. I'm sure they will really appreciate it if you and some others wouldn't mind putting together a clip to say well done and good luck, etc. Well, let's start with Lee Addison and John Davidson. Kieran, I know how passionate you are, and it's fantastic what you're doing in the wheelchair game. I do wonder if people are in the wheelchair, if they're now taller than you still, because you're a little stumpy man. And we used to always take the P1SS out of you, but with you in charge, or are you involved, Kieran, the passion oozes out of you. And to all those guys in Widnes who are doing that, I mean, your efforts in moving around in a wheelchair and playing a form of rugby league is absolutely fantastic, and most people wouldn't even try and get out of bed with what you're doing, never mind play a game of rugby league. So absolute best of luck, and winning any premiership of any kind in any sport is fantastic, and to win 3 of them in a year, we maybe call you Widnes KR.
I mean, I don't know, Kieran, but congratulations from me and to everyone involved in the Witness Wheelchair team. As Lee said, fantastic effort. Achievements, winning any trophy in sport is great, and celebrate with your teammates and enjoy it. And best of luck.
There you go.
Shall I move on to the next question, Lee? Mark Illingworth, what's the most realistic outcome of NRL talks? Will Super League get more money? Will NRL agree to less control? Or are the red lines Ellis managed no mergers stay in some of the best case for Super League clubs? Also, why can't the Sky deal be agreed whilst the NRL deal is negotiated? Do you want to take that, Lee, or should I?
I don't know anything about that.
Well, I can't tell you the most realistic outcome of NRL talks because I'm not in the meeting rooms and I'm not psychic. The red lines Ellis mentioned, the no mergers stay in summer. The stay in summer thing or the winter thing is, in my understanding, absolute baloney. There's never been a push from the NRL to move Super League back to winter. I know it's been mentioned by Matty Johns or something, but it's so what's the word? Unlikely. It's not funny. I mean, the RLPA would never allow NRL players to play 12 months of the year. So, the NRL's best, like in the old days, aren't going to come over for winter and play in, December and January in England. So that's a nonsense. I think a big reason that Sky gave Rugby League so much money and Super League started in 96 was the move to summer. So they wanted a summer TV product. So I don't think that would help in terms of TV deal, let alone competing directly with rugby union and football in their winter seasons, and the lack of facilities that share grounds, etc., and the impact on attendances. Because at the moment you can't see, but it's actually we're in a heat wave in the UK. We're in drought season, but it's great to go and watch rugby league because it's beautiful weather. Yeah. I think. The mergers thing, there's never been any talk of any mergers, and I don't think necessarily it would happen. I mean, they've not really worked successfully in the NRL either. So I think that's just they're just diversionary tactics, much by agents who talking about things that they really shouldn't be talking about and giving airtime when they shouldn't be giving airtime. But that's what you get with the usual client journalism that's out there. Why can't the Sky deal be agreed whilst the NRL deal is negotiated? Because the NRL offer is linked to what it would do with broadcast and DAZN. That's why. So. Shall I go to my next question, Lee, unless you want to add?
Oh, I'll add something if I want to. Don't you worry. So if I'm silent, you keep going.
Question from Lynn Manfu. Given that the Premier Sports deal was the best that the Aussies at the IRL and NRL running the World Cup would negotiate, why would we expect them to transform Super League? They had full control of it and it's the worst deal ever. They couldn't do any better because the market's tough.
Did the Aussies negotiate that?
No, he's got that wrong. I think he seems to think that because the NRL is hosting the World Cup, that they made a decision. It's actually an IRL decision, and they use IMG to help them make that. And the IRL, well, Troy Grant, who is an Aussie, is the chairman. I believe the general secretary is Danny I can't pronounce his last name.
Danny
Kazanjian, who is English, and the board is made up of people from England, Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, France, etc. So, the Premier Sports thing has been massive this week. Last week, I'm not sure if you've followed it, Lee, from afar, but I did an opinion piece just before they'd announced the deal, basically saying it was a joke that we were 57 days from the World Cup with no broadcaster. They went with Premier Sports because Premier Sports was going to pay money for it, and the BBC wasn't really interested in showing the World Cup. So I understand why people are upset, because we want as many people to watch the World Cup as we can, but the BBC wasn't interested. That's a kind of a key point. And the World Cup is there. The last World Cup didn't make money. It lost money, and we need the World Cup to make money because that's where Germany, Italy, Lebanon, Cameroon, etc., get their funding from. So, Channel 7, I think, has paid £6 million for the rights in Australia. It shows where the English market is at when no one is interested. obviously they're not great times, are they? Other side of the world, etc. But the point that why would we expect them to transform Super League? I mean, I think we've gone through that.
Yeah, he's not. It's not a fair argument because he's not talking about the same people. If we criticise the RFL a fair bit, you and I, and
we do
critically analyse what they do, and I think we'd probably give them as an organisation something like a 5 out of 10 at best. A lot of the time, sometimes they do things that are 9 out of 10. The International Rugby League, the IRL, they make the RFL look like the NRL in terms of their administration. The International Rugby League is an absolute joke. And some of the things that they've done over the last 8 years, 7 years, 6 years have completely taken our game backwards on a global level. They've alienated so many people around the world with some of their decisions, some of their short-sightedness, and their lack of ability to generate funds, full stop. So, send all your complaints. What's that man called who sent us a
Lin Man Fu is the
Mr. Fu, Miss Fu, or whatever you are. Send it straight. Send all your complaints to the International Rugby League because they need to know that this just isn't good enough. I've got nothing good to say about the International Rugby League, so I should probably stop there.
Another question from Kevin Collett. If we want to reduce the number of games, is the Challenge Cup a good use of player resources?
We've got to keep the Challenge Cup somehow. We've got to keep it somehow. What it looks like, how it's packaged, when the rounds are played, etc. Maybe we just do it in a month in the middle of the season to break things up, something to do over the summer, give players a rest, keep the content going. There's so many things we can do. But what we can't do, in my opinion, is get rid of the Challenge Cup.
I like the idea of it as a pre-season tournament. In January and February, culminating as instead of just these pre-season friendlies where some clubs will have 5 friendlies that no one wants to watch, they're rubbish. You'd actually have a bit more meaning in these pre-season games with a cup place on the line.
They effectively do it like that, though. I mean, some of the rounds for the Challenge Cup are played before the season starts, the league season starts, and the problem with these, nobody ever thinks about the players and performance. So if Wakefield draw Wigan in the first round, then that has very big different connotations for the forthcoming Super League season, because one of those teams will get the time to just do a full pre-season with no weekly fixtures. The other team, you'd assume, would go far deep into the competition. So that's the problem with that. Look, we could do a 3-hour podcast on what to do with the Challenge Cup. My summary on that is we just need to keep it, whatever it looks like. I'm a fan of sort of turning the middle of the year into where the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, and the finals and the final is played in one go, kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, we could literally, John, we could talk for hours, and I'd probably want about 10 beers while I did it.
The question from Leonard Gregory, which kind of allies to the previous one, is the season too long? Would 20 rounds and the Challenge Cup be enough for the 4-week final series? I think personally the season is too long. I think you see a drop off in quality, particularly with the amount of injuries. But the flip side of that is more clubs would probably go bust with less games, because that's where they get the majority of their revenue. So it's a kind of a chicken and egg catch-22 situation, isn't it?
Yep.
Mark Williamson watched the PVL Burris interview, which we talked about just before. He explains the 6 again decision was to increase spectacle for fans. Refs are scored on KPIs and dropped for not hitting targets. Is this the governance we need help with? ? We adopt Captain Challenge 6 again. It's not managed and completely half-assed.
One of the problems with referees is they get coached that much and managed that much that they sometimes miss the things that are right in front of their nose, and some of the basic things, and that it's not everything about the NRL isn't perfect, and players and clubs are always fighting against some of these things. As I said earlier, I totally appreciate what the NRL are trying to do, but there's a real world consequence for these things too. And one of them is confused referees at times, and referees who sometimes referee like they're under pressure, quite frankly. We also have players that are breaking down at astronomical rates. So just because the NRL are doing it and it's working doesn't mean it will fit in England too. And then the other thing is budget. The other thing is resources that you've mentioned several times.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Just again, I think it is the governance that the RFL needs help with, but the referees department, well, I think there's a lack of referees in the UK generally in rugby league. So that, dropping referees is very difficult when you've only got a very select number. I think if there was some sort of NRL Super League partnership, maybe you could have some sort of system where younger Australian refs might do a stint in Super League and vice versa.
The top Australian referee right now, Ashley Klein, spent his formative refereeing years professionally in England. So,
yeah, I think we probably need a campaign to encourage more people to referee because, it's a cultural change, isn't it? The referees at all levels are getting more abuse and more criticism, but we need to try and, probably invest in that department. But again, money, as we said. A question from John Michaels. The rugby league commercial makes no money. The TV deal doesn't cover the cap and clubs lose millions every year. What exactly makes the comp worth so much that they can be offended by £7 million for 10%? Having the NRL on board also exposes them to the competition's liabilities, even more so given the RFL has no money. Rugby league commercial does make some money. I think actually it's made more money in the last year to two before, but yeah, we're not talking tens and 20s of million. The TV deal doesn't cover the cap, but what makes the competition worth so much? I don't know exactly what the valuation of Deloitte included, whether it included the whole clubs themselves or not. That's a difficult one to answer there, John. And another question from JJ Smith. Should rugby league look to rugby union on inspiration that using the scrum as an attacking tool? Wouldn't it be easy to police the scrum if rugby league used rugby union rules that the ball is not out of the scrum until it's picked up or leaves last man's foot? Could this encourage more set plays as a defensive can't time rush?
Well, dare I say he's thinking a little bit evolutionary there because we've not attacked at scrums, it seems, for an awful long time. I know they've changed some rules in the NRL to move the scrums around to encourage that. So, yeah, we've gone 40 years or something, 30 years where there's no scrum attack, basically. And I remember working under Des Hasler at Manly, and he said the idea of the scrum and the way we put people into the scrum is we can just settle straight into our set, straight from the scrum. So the left side, there was a scrum on the left, for example. The left second rower would be in the scrum, but the right second row would be defending out in the centre somewhere or just inside the centre straight away. So, yeah, that's how the game has gone, basically, and now we're trying to wrestle it back with some rule changes. Looking at the symptoms rather than the causes again.
Yeah, I love a set play from a scrum. I can remember 2019 grand final, Justin Holbrook, St Helens scoring against Salford with a play I think set up by James Roby, and I can remember Wigan more recently under Matty Peat scoring one with a playing kick. I think it was against Hull KR, and the other one they tried against Penrith, which almost came off. And that was a set play. So I'm all for that. More set plays from scrums would be great. Lee, I think we've been recording for about 40 minutes. That's just the Twitter question. So we move on to Facebook.
Why don't we leave the Facebook ones till the end? Have you got many? Have you got many on Facebook?
I've got, I think, about 8. Oh no, sorry, I've got 3. Not too many. There's a few.
We'll end up covering some of the topics anyway. So because let's break it up a little bit. Hull KR played Warrington last Tuesday in the game that I thought was going to be played in the next century. Hull KR lost at home 28-34. Hull KR scored tries through Lewis, Lawton, Hadley, Pangai Jr., and goals came from Martin and 5 from Morg. Warrington scored 2 through Hopawati and Bentley, Sipley, Byrne, Williams all scored 1 each, and Irwin kicked 5 goals. Now, we've got to give due diligence to this game because I suppose we covered all the others, didn't we, the week before? So this was a game that has been just sitting there when we've been reading out the ladder each week, the table, and they were the only 2 teams that had played one less game. And I think last week you predicted, and I didn't argue with you, that Hull KR would win, and it's a shock result.
Yeah, it shows exactly what I know. This game feels like, I know it was a week ago, it feels like it was about 3 months ago, but it was quite entertaining, and I think for a Tuesday, it was a bit of a breath of fresh air. Quite even at half-time, and then it was, Warrington dominated second half. It was pretty amazing how badly Hull KR slipped off. And then obviously there was the red card from Mikey Lewis and the brain explosion from Tavita Pangai Jr. Now, Pangai Jr. suspended again because he had 7 games suspended out of the 9 that he's been about. I said it before when they signed him. I said that was a terrible signing, and
you did. I remember.
I have been proved right. So yeah, that's just come back to bite him. And the Mikey Lewis one, he had quite a mixed game apart from the send off. I think he kicked the ball out on the full twice. Did either score or set up a try, but then the challenge on Irwin, I don't think he meant it to be dirty or, but it was a bit careless leading with his boot, and it was the right decision. And yeah, you can see he was pretty distraught being sent off. It was a bit of a brain explosion, and yeah, I think them resting him or not playing him against Toulouse, even though he wasn't banned yet, it just kind of goes to show where they're at. So that's another big issue for Hull KR and Willie Peters. But massive credit to Warrington. They've stepped up a gear in the last couple of weeks, and obviously then go on and beat Huddersfield in quick succession. I think something like 3 games in 10 days. It's like old school Easter. So big win for Warrington, big result for them.
At the weekend, Leigh 62, Bradford 10, tries from Mulhern, Brogan, 2 from Senior, 2 from Lamb, 2 from Cook, Hanley, Offengawi for Leigh, goals 11 from Cook. Bradford scored tries through Blake and Peposhi, and Atkin kicked a goal. I am really, really, really worried about Bradford, John.
Yeah, well, they're bottom of Super League. I think they've got the worst defence. Yep, they've... sorry, I'm just double-checking. Points for, points against. They're on 402, so if they've got the worst attack and the worst defence. Leigh were exceptional. Leigh have been really, really good for quite some time, knocking off Leeds the other week at Headingley. But yeah, Bradford, I think it goes to show you can't bring in a team in October and expect them to recruit. I think the recruitment's been pretty average, but then again, they've not had the time that you need. There's not a lot of players available that part of the season. They've signed, John Bateman, James Bentley, some rumours that maybe Jackson Hastings will end up at Bradford. They've obviously got a lot more time to recruit now, but yeah, this season, it's not been great for them. We look at the bottom.
On the flip, Leigh are really putting it together at the right end of the year, aren't they?
Yeah, they had a lot of injuries at the start of the season and had a slow start, but they've been really building momentum. And I really like the way Leigh play. I like they've got a great spine. They've got a great forward pack. So yeah, up to 5th now, breathing right down the neck of Wakefield, actually. Same amount of points as Wakefield. So I think if Leigh finished 4th, Warrington are 4 points ahead of them, that'd be a great result for Leigh.
Wigan Warriors 26, Wakefield Trinity 12. Wigan's tries from French, 2 from Marshall, and Field got another. Kieran kicked 5 goals. Wakefield Trinity's 12 came from Hall and Rodwell scoring tries, and Jowett kicking 2 goals. I think the last couple of weeks are showing Wakefield aren't the real deal yet, John.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, I think we both expected a Wigan win at home, but Wakefield, is that 3 losses in a row now?
I
Yeah.
believe it is, yeah. So
Yeah, I mean,
Leeds,
St Helens and
St
Wigan.
Helens, and Wigan, yeah.
Yeah, there was no shame in that Leeds loss because that was a really close game. They were absolutely pitiful against St Helens. So yeah, I think the last 3 weeks you put it all together, it's showing that Wakefield aren't title changes this season. Next season, perhaps they've had a couple of forwards go. They brought in Emre Gula from the Dragons in the Illawarra. But yeah, I think they're just not quite there, and they come down to earth a little bit. And there was also I saw on an interesting clip of Daryl Powell with a bit of lip reading extraordinaire, not happy about a certain decision.
Was there some industrial language in it, John? Potentially.
I think fudging bullcrap. I mean, I'm not a certified lip reader, but I don't think it took someone to work out what he was saying.
The miracle in St Helens continues. St Helens 36, Castleford 12, Wellesbury, Wright, Douglas, Humphrey, Sailor, McDonald with tries, 5 goals for Hastings and 1 for Sailor. Castleford tries from senior Laulau Tagangai and 2 goals for McNamara. So Saints win again. There was some speculation on somewhere that Jack Wellesby's going to Wigan. Have you heard anything along those lines?
Yeah, I think that was a while ago. No, I don't think when they've got Dryfield and they've got Noah Hodgkinson there, I don't think that's I think that's nonsense. I'd heard a rumour a while ago about P&G maybe showing some interest, but Michael Chamis denied that when I contacted him. But the story from this game is the red card and the send-off for a punch.
Jackson Hastings.
Bring back the biff, Lee.
No arguments from me.
No, well, I'm not. That was tongue in cheek. I wasn't advocating bringing back the biff, but I was obviously away on holiday, so I didn't see the game. But I was looking at my phone, and they'd clipped up the incident, and what a bizarre incident. So you don't really see it. It's in back play. It looks like Hastings has thrown a punch at Dupree. Hastings gets sent off. Then Dupree gets sin-binned and then seems to go after, or tried to go after Hastings in the tunnel. And Scott Morrell, the assistant coach at Cass, is trying to get in the way. And then he's started pushing and laying to Morrell. So not a great look, is it? But from St Helens, I mean, your captain is throwing a punch against. So I mean, Hastings has just had a horrible year, hasn't he? Not all these performances have been bad, but I remember the first game of the season he had a run-in with some Warrington fans who were giving him some stick. And then he's had a few suspensions, and obviously St Helens have not been particularly good on the field, and he's the skipper. Not a good look, and not a good look from Dupree either. Pushing you, it looked like he lost his head as well. But to St Helens' point of view, Jack Wellesby was exceptional. They were 30-0 up at half time, and the game was done after 40 minutes.
Well, they're on a roll now, and all they need now is a coach who's not got a fantastic coaching record to fly over from Australia and ruin it all for them. Kevin Walters was announced as a St Helens coach.
Yeah, I was going to say, are we going to get to that in a bit, or your favourite coach? We're going to get to that now?
Absolutely. Look, getting the Kangaroos head coach is a great thing in that sense.
He's a big name in that sense, yeah.
But there's a reason no NRL clubs are knocking on his door. Or if they are, they're not. I think if there was an NRL job for him, he'd be taking it. Put it that way. And when he got the Broncos job 5 years ago, maybe his coaching record didn't stand out. The only thing that people will sort of argue his case with is maybe the year they got to the grand final, but they didn't win it. And Madge 2 years later gave enough gave them enough to get over that edge as well. Plus, the players were 2 years older. The majority of the squad stays together. I understand all that. But under Kevy, the Broncos culture that is questionable, in inverted commas, really, really took hold under Kevy. And I have no doubt that Kevy will make the players and the club a bit happier. He's a great person, by all accounts. And he's not a useless coach by any stretch. But, I mean, I looked at the Ashes last year, and England weren't tactically fantastic, but Australia weren't either. It was like watching under-12s in Kangaroos jerseys and England jerseys. It was really bad. And I wouldn't be too excited if I'm a St. Helens fan. Put it that way.
Yeah, I think the reaction was pretty much surprised, wasn't it? Bit of a left field choice because obviously they were linked with Shane Flanagan. I don't think he wanted to come to Super League. I think Ben Hornby was another one who didn't want to leave.
Ben Teo, it was reported Ben Teo turned it down.
Yeah, I think Ben Teo knocked it back. I think maybe Matt Ballon probably is in the running for Queensland as well, or as the next NRL head coach may have knocked it back. So I think he was probably down the list. But yeah, I think a lot of St. Helens fans are excited about the big name. He coached at Catalans, 16 years ago, got them to the semi-finals, one win from a grand final. The following year, they were wooden spooners. So that didn't end well.
Sounds like his Broncos reign.
His Broncos reign, as you mentioned, didn't end well. His Queensland Origin reign didn't end well. So, yeah, I think it's a wait and see, that one. I don't think it's a slam dunk, and it's certainly different because I think most people expect him to go that young up-and-coming or younger up-and-coming assistant coach as opposed to an older experienced coach from Australia, but that's the way they've gone. So, yeah, it's
Good luck to
certainly
them.
a surprise.
Good luck to them. Hull KR lost a second game in 7 days. Hull KR 12 to lose my team 32. And that was in Hull as well. Minchella and Gorman scored a meat pie each for Hull KR. Martin kicked 2 goals for Toulouse. Jusame, Troppis got 2. Marion, Ulberg and Paul Selly all scored a try each. And Rouge kicked 4 goals. Toulouse, oui. Hull KR, no.
Yeah, I mean, a massive result from Toulouse. A fantastic effort in France without Oli Archel-Bort as well, who's probably their best player. Their young French backs were exceptional. Hull KR, as you can expect from the kind of amount of games, they look very tired, very slow. But yeah, this is a real, shocking loss, I would say, particularly at home, considering that amount of points. Yeah, a real eye opener.
Catalans 26, Hull FC 27. Catalan, Staines, Leeming, Roger Smith, and Duralator scored tries. Asperol Bichet kicked 5 goals. Hull FC, Moy, Martin, Hill, and Caesar seized the tries. Caesar kicked 5 goals, and Arthur kicked a field goal. So the John Cartwright Cup, the JC Cup, went the way of Hull.
This was a bizarre game. Hull FC were 10-0 up, and then Catalans come back into it, and they're 26-14 ahead after 53 minutes. And then Hull FC come and Jake Arthur wins it with a drop goal. Just a really insane game. 2 clubs with not a lot to play for apart from pride, but Hull FC coming back from that stage, well, being 10-0 up and then having to come back, but good effort from them. But Catalans, they've really dropped off. No, they've got some sizable names from the NRL coming next year, but you'd think that club needs a fair clean out. Needs
some surgery.
It needs some open heart surgery, I would say.
as bad a week Hull KR had, Warrington Wolves had a good week. Warrington 34, Huddersfield Giants 24. And I don't think that result is too bad for the Huddersfield Giants either, to be honest with you. Tries for Warrington, Walker, Bentley, Powell, Williams, Lindop and Ashton. Goals were 5 of them from Hayes. For the Giants, Holsall got 2 tries. Hewitt, Wrench and Gagai got 1 each. Flanagan kicked 2 goals. Positive for both teams, I'd say, and even though Huddersfield lost.
Yeah, it was a good start from Huddersfield. They went ahead, and then Warrington hit back through Danny Walker up the middle, James Bentley then through the middle, and I think Warrington were about 22-4 ahead and cruising, and then Huddersfield came back into it. But what was it, Huddersfield 3 in a row, 4 in a row? Warrington are in great form, so I think there's no shame losing there, but they had a real dig. So yeah, a fair result, a fair performance from Huddersfield as well, but Warrington looking good at the right time of the year now.
Huddersfield would have lost that game by 53 months ago.
Exactly.
York 16, Leeds 66. I'm worried about York too. Tries from Wood, Benison and Nofaluma for York. Benison kicked 2 goals. Leeds, I'm going to need 5 hours to read out this list. Lum kicked 3, scored 3 tries. Hankinson scored 2. Watkins, Aledski, Miller, Lodge scoring on debut. Hall, Croft, Hanley. You're in trouble when a couple of props score, let me tell you. The opposition, I mean. Connor kicked 4 goals. Hankinson kicked 4 goals. And Miller kicked another. They all took it in turns. So they got back to the top of the Super League at the time with that. That was 12 tries. And they demolished York at the Community Stadium there in York. The problem for Leeds now, they're going to have to pay some players some winning pay. And their financial accounts weren't great, were they, when they were released last week, John?
No, they weren't. They weren't a big surprise. I don't have the figure off the top of my head because I think I wrote that story a week ago. But despite revenue across certain things, hospitality and other things were up, and attendances were up. Another loss for Leeds, which I think the other clubs, obviously St Helens, have already announced their results. There'll be some other clubs' results in the next month, and I expect all of those will be losses, with all the clubs sort of being propped up by wealthy owners. And in Leeds' instance, it's the Caddick family.
We are finally at the table, and everybody's played the same number of games. 24 games for everyone. Leeds have won 19 of them, and they're on 38 points. Wigan Warriors, who are second behind Leeds Rhinos at the top, have also won 19 of their 24, but points difference means that their 38 points aren't enough for them to be on the top of the ladder, but there's not much between those two sides in terms of ability. It's just that Wigan's points difference is a couple of hundred off Leeds. Warrington are now in third after their good week and on 36 points. Wakefield are in fourth on 32, and their points difference is about 50-ish better than Leigh Leopards, who are in fifth on 32 points too. Hull KR are in sixth, and they're on 30 points. Breathing down their neck in seventh now are a rejuvenated St Helens on 28. Catalan Dragons are still the current French leaders because they're in 8th on 18, but Toulouse are now up to 16 and they're in 9th. Castleford Tigers are 10th on 16 too. So Castleford and Toulouse equal on points, but Castleford are far, far worse points differential. Hull FC are in 11th, a little bit of a mini resurgence for them, and they're on 14 points. As to our York Knights, who are in 12th, but York Knights have a far worse points difference. Huddersfield Giants are in 13th, and they're on 12 points, and their points difference is a good 80-ish better than that of the Bradford Bulls, who are on the same number of points on 12. So Bradford are at the bottom, Leeds are at the top, and that would be such a discussion point in the west of Yorkshire right now because those two teams have a great rivalry. Talking about Yorkshire, John, West Yorkshire. Ryan Carr's officially gone. We forgot to mention that when we talked about Castleford's game. Ryan Carr officially gone. We've spoken last week about how that wasn't handled very well. What's going on at Cass, mate, and who's next?
Well, it was no surprise that eventually they announced it. They've continued with the personal reasons thing. They're not really saying any more. I think the owner said something about media hysteria, which I found a bit funny, because I think if you're talking about hysteria, it was probably on social media. But the problem with that is, and I understand if it's a legal issue, they can't say too much, but I think the general transparency in the way Cass have handled this has been poor. And when you don't, inform your fans, then there's going to be a vacuum and people that will be filled by things from different sources. It's been a nightmare. It's been a nightmare while for Cass, hasn't it? I think it's really sad to see Ryan Carr go. I went in and met him at the Jungle in December, did an interview with him, and I think he was, he was really upbeat and positive about the job ahead. And obviously, there's been a lot of challenges this year. I think Cass's recruitment has been poor. They've been able to beat Wigan and Leeds, but have had massive losses and some really poor performances thrown in there as well. He's obviously got more frustrated as the week's gone on. You can see with his post-match press conferences. There was obviously the sideline comment at Leeds, but I had a bit of sympathy for him there because obviously probably didn't think there was a microphone picking up what he was saying. But then if you look at Cass, it's another new coach after how many coaches have they had in the last 3 or 4 years? 4 or 5. And where do they go next? I think the two names that have been propping up Paul Rowley and Ian Watson. Paul Rowley, obviously, I don't know, obviously was sacked by St Helens, but, I don't think he's allowed to coach for a certain period. I don't know how long that period is. And then Watson, assistant coach at Hull KR, former Salford and Huddersfield boss. So, I think maybe they won't look to Australia, but maybe they will. It's a hard one. There's not a huge amount of coaches out there available in Super League. So,
NRL results this week. Storm got beat by the Panthers in a close one. Raiders got beat by the Broncos in a game of ping pong, but that was a close one too. Dolphins were pretty convincing, beating the Eels. The Knights lost at home to the Manly Sea Eagles, which was a real shock, and obviously will move quickly on to the next game. Rabbits lost at home 26-45 to the Warriors. The St. George Illawarra Dragons got pumped by the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are sort of on the periphery of the 8 now, so they're sort of rightly looking at potentially making the finals, but they're playing Penrith this week, which could be a problem there. Titans lost at home to the Sharks in another game of ping pong, and the Roosters lost to the West Tigers in a 24-25 loss. Cowboys had the bye. I've whizzed through them very quickly, John, because there's actually a couple of things worth talking about in the NRL. The first one, and I'm not necessarily doing this in an order, the Broncos and Storm, because they're essentially out of the competition now, they're going to be trialling the new kickoff rule, i.e., the old kickoff rule that's now been brought back from the one from the Super League era, i.e., when you score, you then kick to the opposition. Now, I think there might be a subtle change. I think they might have a choice when they score. But the Broncos and Storm will be trialling that in the NRL this year, in one of the final 2 rounds. What's your thoughts on that?
Why change it? I don't see the need. Why are we? Yeah.
All they're doing is trying to fix the symptoms, not the causes.
I don't think it needs to be changed.
They're just chasing symptoms. Adam Reynolds is reportedly going to retire, and I think the quality of Adam Reynolds as a player is underrated in a massive way, but I think one of the best indicators of it is when he left South Sydney to come to the Broncos. I say come to the Broncos because I'm in Brisbane. The Broncos basically replaced the Rabbits in the top 4 for a couple of years, and I think Adam Reynolds was a massive part of that. So, look, he's falling to bits. He probably maybe should have retired a year ago as a grand final winner, but now it looks like it's happened. So yeah.
Yeah, he's had a great career. I mean, 2-time NRL Grand Final winner, hasn't he? With with South and with the Broncos. I think it's a bit of a shame he didn't play his whole career at South, being a local junior there. And there was that thing, I think, was it he wanted an extra year, they weren't going to give it to him, and obviously he's played longer on, so I think that's seen as a recruitment mistake by the Bunnies. But yeah, little halfback, but always tough, great kicker of the game, great passer. Probably never, I think he played a couple of Origin games for New South Wales, probably never got an extended run. So probably never, he never got the opportunity to shine on the international stage, but there's always a lot of competition, isn't there, in those places? And, he's had a great career and will be fondly remembered, I think, by both Bunnies fans and Broncos fans.
Absolutely. And the sign of a good halfback is winning more than one competition, particularly if it's at two different clubs or more.
100%. Yeah.
Let's end with those Facebook questions, eh?
Yep. Let me just 1 second while I bring.
I'll tell you what, John, with all the things going on in the extra game and stuff like that, we've done quite well to keep this to what's going to be about an hour and 20. We've done well.
Yes. There's been a lot happening this week, obviously, with the NRL, the pushback from Rugby League, Commercial and Super League saying, let's keep talking, but we want more money. And everything happening with the World Cup and Premier Sports. And
coach movement.
Yep. Coach hires, coach movement, there has been a lot. This is a really good question from Tom Colbeck. If you could change or introduce one thing to try and increase participation in the game, what would it be? Playing and or attending games?
Depends on the country, I think. But I assume because it's Super League 360, we should start with the English one. Participation. Very good question. I actually think you have to think backwards with this. It comes down to creating stars at the top of the funnel. And gradually, since the early 90s, there's less and less high-profile rugby league players.
Nationally in the UK, yep.
Yeah. And more people know a darts player, even in the north of England now, than any rugby league player.
Luke the Nuke.
Yeah. And that's where it starts, because what kids do, and we all did this as kids, we wanted to emulate our heroes. And if we had a favourite team, we had a favourite player, and we wanted to emulate them in somehow. And I think that's the key. And I think that's where British Rugby League has to start. I would have started that yesterday. That's how important that is. In terms of Australia and participation, they deny this. Dave Trodden, the New South Wales Rugby League CEO, was on another podcast denying there's a problem in the bush and the bush isn't dying. It's not withering on the vine. It is withering on the vine because there's enough people out there that will tell us it's withering on the vine. One of the problems is that the game isn't administered absolutely centrally from the top in Australia. So the clubs still hold a lot of power. So I'll give you an example. In some country areas, an NRL club will pick the eyes out of the best players and they'll stop them playing country representative games, even though they still live in that area. And that means the players that get picked for country rep probably aren't as good, etc. But also, if you look at, let's just use the Origin as an example. There's far less players from around the country areas that play Origin now as well. We've become a lot more city-centric, and there's also a massive difference in Australia now between kids who are in elite school programs and elite programs and the ones who don't get access to them. And I can literally see that difference sometimes 20 minutes down the road from one to the other. And they're the big challenges facing rugby league in Australia and participation.
Yeah, I agree with you. The top down, like if you can't see it, then how can you be it kind of star element? I think allied to that in terms of the UK is the school the presence in schools. I don't think there's enough rugby league in schools, and I think you start with that grassroots through touch, and you build up the skill set, you build up the fun aspect for both girls and boys, and then you introduce them to whether it be at 10 or whatever age is appropriate these days into tackling, and you make it accessible. Now I can always remember when I was in primary school I was going to say actually probably the early 90s, when the Newcastle Falcons, who were the local professional basketball team, came in and did a clinic with us, and we all wanted to play basketball. And I went out and played basketball. I had a basketball ring in my backyard and played club basketball for years. And that, I think that kind of that presence, you can see the players and they look massive, and that we've got to be getting more teams to go into schools, not just doing clinics, but also having school teams. But that development side is massive, and I know some clubs do it better than us. But the RFL has cut funding to development officers around the country for 13 years at least, since the 2013 World Cup. Development officers in London, in Wales, in Scotland, in the Midlands.
The NRL have done the same too under Peter Tuvlandis.
Yeah. And I think that's something if there is an NRL deal, that's something that if there is more money coming into the game, that needs to be spent on. Because I think we can talk about club losses and player wages and all that sort of thing in Super League, and they are important. But if we don't allocate some money to the funnel at the bottom as well, and that grassroots, then where's the next, in 10 years, where's the next Super League player coming from? Or in 15 years, we've got to worry about that as well, because I think, we talked about this on the Ashes Rugby League podcast, Great Britain and England's failures for more than 50 years. If you don't change that, then, there won't be a change in the top funnel.
And participation and performance aren't two cheeks of the same backside. They're very intricately linked, because in theory, the more participation you have, the more people will be able to perform at a top level, because the funnel will be bigger at the bottom. However, in terms of growing participation, we've got to remember some people just want to have fun playing the game. They don't particularly want to get better. They just want to play, and they want to be safe, and
they don't want to get bashed.
Yeah,
they don't want to have their nose broken. They don't want to have, and I think that the question, I think it was from Tom. That also goes into attendance, and that's where I think touch is a good thing. You can go out and throw around a ball, and it's great exercise. You can have fun, but you don't, get your head. You're not driving people into the turf.
The problem with touch, though, John, sorry if I've interrupted, it's not rugby league. It's a modified version of the game, and then they put out these participation figures, and that's what.
Yeah.
Who's got stats on the amount of people who start playing touch and turn into rugby league players? Where are the stats?
I think that is the element, though, when you want attendance and you want viewers, that you can still go out and play a form that's more accessible. Sexes together, whatever, and then you can go to games and watch on TV, because not every fan is a player. Some people just want to watch the game. They might just love the game, but they're not physically fit or strong enough or tough enough to play it, because rugby league is a very hard game. But you need to make it accessible, and that's wheelchair, masters, all these things. But it's a really good question from Tom.
Really good.
Question from Jeff Straddle: should Bradford be relegated and London promoted for 2027? I'm sure we've got a lot of Bradford lovers, so that would send them into a little.
All right, let's do a clip that we clip up and get abused for. Last year, the game spent how much time and money on think tanks and systems for LED screens and stuff like this. And guess what? The top 3 teams in the championship ended up being the teams that the think tanks and the whatevers had come up with. I've got a perfect solution for this. If we're going to have promotion and relegation, let them decide it on the field.
Okay. Are you done?
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to rehash things we've said before, but I think we've both said going to 14 teams was a mistake, and there isn't the quality of players.
And we're seeing that now, John, aren't we, with the results?
Yeah, I think we've seen it all year. Look, you can look at certain results when Bradford have won or York have won and say, oh, this is outstanding, amazing. But over a course of a season, we look at the table now, and we've got Bradford bottom, we've got Huddersfield 13th, York 12th, Hull 11th, Castleford 10th, and Toulouse 9th. Now, obviously, the outlier there is Toulouse, who have a less budget and also have to pay all the costs, and they're doing fantastically well.
Yeah.
But there's Catalans on 18 points in 8th, and there's bottom Bradford on 12 points. So there's, 7 teams with 4 points below them. So that just shows you the bottom half of the competition, how poor they are. Catalans have won 9 games out of 24. Yeah, I don't think a promotion relegation saying Bradford should go down, but there just isn't the quality enough players of there, and you'll see clubs, they'll be recruiting from New South Wales Cup, Queensland Cup. Yeah, we just don't have. So London coming in, that's a separate argument. I think it's really difficult because London are so well resourced and an absolutely dominating championship. Although I think we missed this last week because we recorded before, but Oldham upsetting London, that was massive. So huge credit to Oldham there. The Anthony Seibold effect, clearly, as I wrote before the game. With Alan Kilshaw, but yeah, I think they'd won 21 in a row or 22 or something. So massive result from Oldham. Congrats to them. But the championship with London being there is really a weird comp. They're beating teams by 120 points one week and then a rare loss. So yeah, I don't think as it stands, and I don't know what's going to happen with the NRL, but as it stands, I don't think with the IMG criteria anything will change. I think it's likely that Huddersfield will be in Super League next year, and so will York and Toulouse and Bradford, and I think London will be in the championship, barring any NRL deal or anything difficult. But I think Huddersfield have probably got enough IMG points, and I think Bradford certainly have in other areas, and yeah.
And you can't tell me that Darren Lockyer and his offsider invested and flew all the way over to England thinking that they were going to be in championship for 2 years. I mean, this just
no. I think they were probably arguably told they'll likely get into Super League when there was a committee to determine that last year, and that hasn't happened. How willing they are to wait another 12 months, I don't know. And if the NRL comes in, they might mandate that yes, we want a team in London, but these are all variables that we don't know at the moment. So I don't think a 15-team comp would be good. The thing with London is, where are they going to get? Obviously, they could sign some big name players from the NRL, I'm sure they will. But where are they going to get all the English players that they need to have because they can't run a full import foreign quota team? Where are they going to get them from? I know they've signed Philbin and King from Warrington, but where are the other 10 or more that they need going to come from? We're almost in September, so yeah,
and nobody knows. We're in September.
No. Well, I think the next 2 to 3 weeks, or the next month and a half, are going to be very crucial in terms of TV deal, IMG, amount of teams in Super League, NRL deal, salary cap limit.
You said 2 weeks last week.
Yeah, I did.
So we've now had a week. So hopefully on the next podcast, which I assume we're going to have out on normal time, we'll hopefully have something. Knowing our luck, we'll record it and then it'll be released after we've recorded.
Well, I interviewed Chris Radlinski and Rodri Jones at the Dumble launch a couple of weeks ago, and they both said, within of August. Now, knowing British Rugby League or English Rugby League, it could be pushed back.
They forgot to say what year.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they didn't. They were smart. They didn't give a specific deadline. That was smart. So,
is that it for questions, John?
I think that is all the questions. We did have one from Robert McFarlane who asked, what are your thoughts on Huddersfield ground share with Dewsbury Rams? We pretty much covered that.
Yeah.
And I did message Robert back 2 weeks ago, I believe, when that news came out. We covered that at length, didn't we?
Lee? We did.
So, yeah. I referred Robert to go back and listen. We don't want to bore everyone with the same stuff, but to go back and listen to that pod, yeah. Oh, we do. Sorry, I apologise. We had a DM from Mike Price. Here's a question. Are Sky fit to take our game forward, naming players who don't even play for us and then saying our last 5 games were losses? And he screenshotted some information from Hull FC Catalan's game.
Standards are dropping all around the media world.
Yes.
You work in newspapers, you probably know this better than me, but I've got a very good read on it. Pardon the pun. 20 years ago, as a journalist, you'd have had your work scrutinised. You'd have had to check it.
Yeah.
Check it again, etc. Now, facts matter far less than they used to. What matters are clicks. What matters are views. And just by commenting on that in the world that we're in now, depending if our friend replied to something on a social media channel, is only benefiting the social media account holder for the algorithm. So unfortunately, that's the world we're in now. I could give you 1,000 examples in Australia that happen all the time. You know you're in trouble when you're watching a news station that you hold in the highest esteem since childhood, and there's spelling mistakes on the wraparound on the bottom. Like that's when you're in. That's when you know you're in trouble. And no surprise to me. And just imagine it getting worse. I mean, it happens with so many things in life, and unfortunately, it's starting to happen to our mainstream media now too.
Yeah, I think the question, are Sky fit to take our game forward, is a difficult one to answer. I think Sky, over the 30-odd years of being great partners for Super League, there's still, there's a lack of interest from other broadcasters who are willing to throw more money at the sport, which, for numerous reasons. I think I did a big piece in the Eye, which people can go and read, about the 3 options for Super League at the moment. They look like they look like Sky Plus, Super League Plus, or Sky Plus Premier Sports, or Sky Plus DAZN. I think Super League Plus would be a mistake, personally. I think Premier would be a mistake. But yeah, I think a deal where Sky show 3 games a week would be good, because all their resources would be dedicated on those 3 games instead of 7 where they're spread and each game doesn't get the same level of coverage or attention.
Is that it for questions?
I think that is. I don't think there's been any on any other platform. I apologise if we've missed any, but I think that's everything. We will follow up next week's pod with any we may have missed, but thanks everyone for all your feedback and engagement. It's really, really appreciated. And we wanted to prioritise our questions this week as a thank you. So thank you, and you'll hear or see us next week.